Hello and welcome back to the Milltown Way podcast, the independent Shamrock Rovers podcast that brings you all things hoops. Today, hosted by Adam Casey, no Ryan Brennan this time for the first ever time. We're going to go into and dissect the Ararat-Armenia second leg fixture that has just taken place in Tallaght. All the transfer news regarding Will Fitzgerald, and then a quick preview into the next fixture in the league away to Drogheda. So just before we do get started today, just want to get into just the fact that there was no episode last week just due to unforeseen circumstances. So we're sorry about that, and hopefully we can keep the episodes coming after each and every game. So let's get into it then. So going into the second leg tonight, Rovers are already in a 2-0 deficit, just like in the previous matchup against Floriana. So I think that coupled with just the opposition that they were playing, I think Rovers fans were a bit confident. We didn't get to discuss on the podcast that 2-0 loss to Ararat-Armenia in Armenia last week due to no episode, but it was a 2-0 loss due to goals from Sandro Lima and Zidane Banjakwai. I think I said that right. But it was a disappointing result. But I do think Rovers fans were a bit more hopeful going into it due to the nature of the last time in Tallaght and how exciting that night was, and just in general how that fixture seemed to have brought in a bit of spur around the team. Going in, there was only one change made to the team, with Jake Mulroney being brought in for Corey O'Sullivan in the starting lineup. And then going in, Tuesday night, nice summer game, beautiful weather, exactly what you'd like. Few players still missing, Dan Calheri and John McGovern out. It was expected that maybe Danny Mandroy would make an appearance, which he would get a few minutes towards the end. He had played 45 minutes for the under-20s against Bray last Saturday, so it's good to see him make his return. With Rovers going into this game, they were already guaranteed a Europa League third qualifying round place, even if they didn't win. While a win would have earned a Europa League playoff round spot and a guaranteed spot at least in the league phase of the Conference League. Of course, everyone listening knows that Rovers did not get the win, and they would ultimately be a 2-1 loss in a disappointing fixture. Just really disappointing, just from the overall performance in that second half to the circumstances and just the stakes involved. The contrast between the performances in the first and second half was so different that it was just a really disappointing result. They were there for the taking. Ararat-Armenia were really not that good today. That first half Rovers performance was exactly what you want and would expect. It was a pitch perfect performance. It was exactly what you want from a team who's 2-0 down and trying to overcome that 2-goal deficit. The game got right on their way, and right from the off there was positive signs. Rovers were quick, they were pressing them, they weren't giving Ararat-Armenia a chance to breathe at all. It was exactly what they wanted. There was some fouls right at the start which were unnecessary from Rovers, but there was just, even from about 3 minutes in, Graham had the ball almost, there was a few half chances. Graham Burko's got a half chance here and Aaron Green had a half chance here. The Rovers just kept on pressing, and it wasn't like it was going both ways or that they were just getting half chances. There was some good quality chances, and they weren't allowing Ararat to try and get them on the counter. So 12 minutes in, then Matt Healy would score an absolute beauty, really. Aaron Green would play a lovely ball across, and just on Aaron Green in general, it was a phenomenal performance from him today. One of his best in a Rovers jersey in a long while. A goal and an assist, and definitely think he's shown that despite being 36, he's still got a lot more in him. And while in the league he has only started 10 matches, it was nice to see him start tonight and play as well as he did in that first half. It was a lovely pass back across, and Mahi took the finish brilliantly, and I think at that moment everyone in Tallaght and everyone in the stadium started to believe that another miracle was on the cards, that they were getting deja vu from 2 weeks prior against Floriana. I think that's what everyone was hoping for. But Rovers would continue to push on and get the quality of their chances would only kind of get better. The first half was a perfect performance from Rovers. But actually, they were knocking on that door, but it would take a little bit longer to them to get that second. And I think looking back now with how the game would end up, some of these chances that they were getting could have been converted, and it could have been 3-0 at half time. It very easily could have been 3 or 4-0 at half time. We wouldn't have had to worry as much about Armenia getting that one goal with the one chance they had, one high quality chance they had. But just one thing to point out as well on that Armenia, that first Rovers goal, the Mahili goal, was the VAR check. 6 minutes it took. Like, what were they actually checking? There was no... Absolutely, it was comical stuff. There was no communication from the referee to the players or the fans. It was just the players, the Armenian Ararat players with the ball ready to take tip, while the Rovers players and everyone else just stood there and waited for 6 full minutes before he would confirm the goal. It was comical. It was actually, and this is meant to be a European competition, and that's the quality of refereeing. I understand it might have been getting checked, but 6 minutes... Does anything need to be checked for 6 full minutes to make a decision? Okay, that exception can be made for when stuff does take that little bit longer, but if that's the case, make it obvious, make it clear to the fans and the players and everyone in the stadium that it's taken this extra time, that it is... But give a reason, give an explanation as to what is going on, because Rovers players were left up in the air. No one knew what was... Rovers players, Rovers fans, everyone in the ground, everybody watching at home as well was left up in the air. I'm sure at home they put in a little bit more information, but wouldn't have surprised me if on the broadcast it wasn't as good either. But Rovers would continue on now, keep on pressing, trying to get the chances, and these are, as I mentioned a few moments ago, the chances that really, if they could have converted, if they had have converted, the second half would have been a different story. It would have been Armenia pressing them, or Rovers even killing the game off at that point. Particularly going down that right hand side in this first half. Jake Mulroney had probably some of his best moments in a Rovers jersey today, getting the best of the Armenian defenders time and time again. He was up and down that wing on that right hand side all the time in that first half. It was outstanding from him. A few nice balls in from Jack Byrne that the goalkeeper was coming for but wasn't always getting clear. Like, there was one example where Jack Byrne whipped the ball in. The keeper, Bravim, I think I said that right, came up short and he kind of flapped it rather than getting clear contact with the punch. The ball would fall to Dylan Watts, but he just couldn't get the connection to bend it around the keeper. And it was kind of that these are the chances that you kind of have to take in a big European game to continue on. They're the chances that you need to convert. And looking back, I think Rovers fans, Rovers players and management, Bradley, everyone will be looking at chances like that and just thinking, what if these should have counted, they should have made them count that little bit more. But the patience, the incredible play, there's just the perfect play did continue. It was up until that final touch. The big confidence from them. They'd got the early goal. They'd just needed one to at least bring it level, and the confidence and the attacking nature did not slow down at any point in that first half. They just kept on coming down, particularly down the right side. Crosses being fired in, threatening balls in, everything that you wanted Rovers to do, they were doing. There was one or two where Brennan got ahead that we just couldn't steer it on the target. There was ones where there just wasn't clean contact. The defender was getting a last minute touch or this or that, or it was just exactly what you wanted just up until the final moment with the final touch. But then 36 minutes in, Rovers would level it up on aggregate 2-0 on the night. Goalkeeper came out to kind of slide in and left himself in all kind of trouble. Aaron Green was trying to get a foot to it, but the keeper didn't really get the ball clear properly and came to Jack Byrne's feet, who kept his cool and went around the goalkeeper and under pressure from defenders just kept his cool, played a nice little pass across to Aaron Green, who side-footed into the empty net. It was a fantastic goal and it capped off a phenomenal first half from Aaron Green and from the lads all together. Jack Byrne as well kept it going in that first half and was outstanding. So that was just a brilliant first half, and they kept pressing with 2 goals. With how the game ended up, yes, you could say, oh, we could have got another, they could have got a third, maybe a fourth, and just kept pressing. But I don't think anyone coming out of that first half would have been unhappy with how it went. I think everyone in the ground, everyone watching at home, everyone watching that first half would have been really impressed with how Rovers were playing, and they would have expected more of the same. There was a few moments again just right at the end of the first half, a few more chances, including a free kick from Jake Mulroney that was good ball, which was on target. Didn't test the keeper too much, but he was quite a distance out. I don't know if shooting was the right option, but he did so anyway. And coming in, that was the end of the first half. Then neither sides would make any changes, but then the second half started and it was like a different game. It was like a different team came out in that second half. It was slow. It was everything that we were talking about in the first half of positive nature about Rovers in terms of their fast, their pressing, their creating chances. None of that was there. None of that was apparent in that second half. And you can look at stats, you can do anything like that, and it will show you that the eye test itself, the stats and everything will show you that second half was just polar opposite to that first half. It was just not what. It was just a poor performance in the second half, and it was the most frustrating part of that is just how good they were in that first half and how that can how it can transport, how different, and how can you come out in the second half with all the momentum on you and just play a completely different game and just not play, just look not even, it's not that they didn't look bothered, it was just so slow and just no, you've just scored 2 goals in the first half. You'd think that you'd be wanting to you'd be able to carry that momentum forward, but they just were not able to do that. They just could not carry the momentum forward in that second half. I don't know what it was. It just was slow. There was just no urgency. And I understand that you're not going to be as urgent when you're 2 goals up. In theory, you can take it to extra time. But you want to be pressing on to get that goal to win it in regular period. It was just, it was very slow and just not very good. Just a bad second half, and the frustrating part is how different it was to the first half. When we talk about the first half, we mentioned many times about how it was the perfect example of a team chasing a 2-goal deficit, trying to overcome that, and it was the perfect way they could have played for that. But then that second half was probably the worst way they could have played in this case. But anyway, there was a few. Conor Roberts got a corner right at the start. There was a few chances here and there. Just 1 or 2 chances here and there. There was never really a high quality chance. It was just half chances. There was a few. One thing about Ararat, they were a lot dirtier in that second half. I think it's Junior Bueno. I think I'm saying that right. Not the Kinder Bar. He was dirty. He got a yellow card very early in that second half and he clattered right into Adam Brennan right in the middle of the park. It was a yellow card, obviously. It was never anything more. But it wasn't the last time he would clatter into players, and particularly Adam Brennan. Whenever Adam Brennan seemed to be getting into any bit of movement or any bit of passing position, he was getting fouled by the Armenian players, and I don't know, there's times when you can look at a decision and a different ref might give it as, might call a player out a little bit earlier, but they continued to do it and they weren't penalised. One thing also in that second half was the complete difference with the refereeing, in my opinion. The refereeing in the first half, the players were going down and he was kind of not really calling them all. He wasn't calling players out on everything. He was letting the game run a little bit. But in that second half, whenever anyone went down, he called it right away. It didn't matter what. The second anyone dropped to the ground on either team, but particularly Ararat-Armenia, especially when they had the win, especially when they had the lead, they were doing it a lot more. He was just giving it, and I don't. Yeah, I'm not criticising the ref because this happens in all games that refs do buy players going down and stuff like that. But yeah, it just felt like when we're talking about here, how it was like a different game from Rovers' performance. It was like a different game from refereeing perspective as well. Considering he wasn't buying much in the first half, and then the second half he was buying everything that was selling really. But kind of about halfway through the second half, just felt very flat. The play had been flat, and resultingly the ground started to go a bit flat. Like, the fans were just not as loud as they had been, and that's not discrediting the fans. They were phenomenal. Particularly in that first half. They were so loud and they were remarkable and created a brilliant atmosphere. The West and the South Stand sold out tonight, and there was a good showing in the North Stand as well. So no discredit will ever be given to the fans tonight, but when it's never their fault really. When the play is flat, you can't expect them to be getting up for everything. And when I had just been, at this point, probably 20 minutes of flat play and nothing happening, the crowd did start to die down that little bit. But the Rovers did pick it up kind of a little bit towards the 70th minute, where Brennan finding Aaron Green as he made a run into the penalty area. He could only kind of get the shot into the side net, and at that point. But Brennan continued to kind of pull the strings, and he was outstanding tonight. His ball's in, he was just always in there, always in the mix, ready to do something, and he was kind of pulling that strings. He was the only Rovers player really pulling the strings in the second half. Coming down the left, he picked out Burke, lovely in and around this period as well, in the penalty area, got it across to him. Burke did let the ball come right across him and hit a first time shot, but it was right at the keeper. It didn't really test him much. And just as it seemed like Rovers were getting back to who they were in the first half, with the quick play and everything, the same man who would score Armenia's first goal in the first leg, Lima, would go on and score again. Sandro Lima. Put them in front, 2-1 on the night, 3-2 on aggregate overall. The substitute Franca, who had just kind of come on, came into the play. He drove for the byline, cut back a nice low cross across. Sobowale tried to poke it clear initially, but he only got it as far as Liam, who would fire it then into the empty net. And at this point, the atmosphere in the stadium dropped completely. It was quiet, people just weren't. I think everyone thought the dream was over at that point, and I think it just highlighted how poor that second half was, and how I think that goal was the perfect summation of how poor they were. And just, I'm not going to knock the players here and the whole time, and I'm not knocking any players in particular or anyone. Thought it was just such a slow performance in that second half compared to the first. And if it wasn't for how good the first half would be, I don't think this would hurt as much as it does, or it would be as frustrating as it is. But when you come out at 100% in the first half, and then you come out at 10% in the second half, let's say, it's a lot more disappointing than if you're only playing somewhat alright in the first half. A few changes then Rovers would make. Jonathan Afolabi would be brought on, which was a nice move. Just to highlight also earlier in the second half there was some changes made. We got to see Jonathan Afolabi and then the Stevens would come on, and then a few more changes later. At one point this was again, Afolabi was nearly like a rugby tackle. He was dragged around. The player nearly had him in like a chokehold. He was brought to the ground by one of the Armenian players, and at this point, how he did not get booked. I thought at first it was Bueno, so I was expecting him to get double booking, but it wasn't him at that point. It was Bruno Wilson, which just highlighted their dirty play in the second half. Like, no yellow cards for anyone in the second half, and then 4 in the second half for both teams, 3 for Armenia and 1 for Rovers. But Rovers would continue to kind of press, looking to get that equaliser, try to take the game to extra time. Pico wonderfully met a Jack Byrne corner coming in from the left side, but it just didn't hit the target. It was just wide of the post. And then the Rovers would continue to press. It was nice then at this moment that we would see Danny Mondrayo come back and make his appearance back after being out with injury for a bit of time. Naj Razi would also be brought on, and then Michael Noonan as well around this time. But after those subs, there wasn't really a lot of chances. Rovers didn't create anything in these final minutes really as they were pushing on. They only got 4 minutes added on, so there wasn't loads to try to do with it, but no, nothing was created. They just did not create anything. And it was just such a disappointing second half. Well, I know I've reiterated it many times, but compared to that first half and how outstanding they were and how everyone believed that another miracle was on the cards and that another magical night in Tallaght like 2 weeks prior was going to happen, that was it. It was just disappointing, and I think the feeling around the stadium tonight before the game was that another miracle was possible, and especially with the team they were playing and the possible teams they could have been playing in the next round. I think most would have said Rovers got a favourable draw compared to who was left in the champion. Like, at the end of the day, it's the Champions League qualifiers. It's not necessarily easy, and obviously Selj would go through then in the end, winning on penalties, but it was either going to be Egnatia, I think they said that right, from Albania, or Selj, who Rovers have played for before, from Slovenia. And out of the teams left in that Champions League draw, they were probably one of the most favourable draws. So I think everyone kind of had a bit of hope about them, but it just disappointing. That first half, just remarkable, but just the loss of momentum coming into that second half. If the first half had been 10 minutes longer, they probably would have got a third. But if that second half had been half an hour longer, they probably still wouldn't have got another. And then once Ararat managed to scramble that goal, Rovers just struggled to create any high quality chances again. So I guess we'll be seeing Rovers now in the Europa League qualifiers going forward. Still a bit of work to do to qualify for the Europa League, and worst case scenario Conference League, which, same worst case, it's great to have European football, but it would be nice to get the Europa League this year. But that will be coming up then next week. So moving on then, onto the man who would walk onto the pitch before the game even kicked off, Will Fitzgerald. The transfer saga that's been kind of going on at the moment between Rovers and Sligo, the two Rovers in the league. Sligo's Rovers captain and arguably their best player this season, Will Fitzgerald, and has joined Shamrock Rovers for €75,000. He walked out. As today is the League of Ireland transfer deadline day, he made the move and walked out onto that Tallaght pitch before the game even started. It's definitely, for Sligo, it'll be tough as they're trying to avoid relegation out of the league, as they are kind of in that scrap at the moment, with them just being 1 point, with them sitting bottom of the table, 1 point behind Waterford in the relegation playoff, and then 5 behind Drogheda, just outside any relegation. He's been arguably their best player so far this season. As your captain, it's hard to lose your captain. But for Rovers, in terms of the player they're getting, it's brilliant. They could not. It's a very good pickup from Rovers, and one fitting it in just before the deadline day as well is quite nice. 25 appearances for Sligo so far this season for Will Fitzgerald. 5 goals, 3 assists. Primarily played out on the left wing this season, but can kind of play in the central midfielder out on the right wing as well. 27 years of age, and it's very promising. The very promising move for Rovers to push on now and close out that league, perhaps retain the double, which would be phenomenal, and also on that push to try get European football, he'll definitely help with the squad. But the move was brought over on the deadline day, 75,000, which is a joint club record fee. His contract, which some might say is a bit much considering his contract in Sligo is set to expire in December, but Rovers need to push on. Rovers are trying to retain their league and cup and push on in European football and hopefully get European football. So I think for a player of his quality, it's definitely a good move for them. Bradley has kind of been a long-term fan of the winger since he's kind of been on the scene, particularly with his time with Waterford and Derry. Been with Sligo Rovers now for 3.5 years now, and it's been probably one of their most consistent players. Sligo were also able to make some moves themselves in this window, but I think just for Rovers, they've got a phenomenal pickup here, and I think all Rovers fans will be happy that the fact that they've pulled him in. And I know it's a record fee and his contract was going to run out in December, but when you're in a position like Rovers are and you're pushing to try get that success and continue to maintain that success, sometimes you have to just make a gamble and spend a bit of money and try get someone who adds that quality and adds that depth to your squad, particularly in going forward in an attacking nature where Rovers tend to have a bit of an older squad going forward. So it'll be good to have him now out on the left hand side and to have him out on the flanks and out on the wings and try create some chances and make an impact on the rest of this season for Rovers. Just one also fun fact, really, he ended up winning Player of the Month in May in the league, so you're getting a player who you're paying 90,000 for a player who's deemed the best player for a month only 2 months ago. Really, can't really argue with that. And then moving on to the last segment, just looking ahead now onto Friday's game. As Rovers, another quick turnaround. We know we mention it all the time about how Rovers are suffering from just how much they're playing and how much they have to keep pushing on because it's only a 3-day rest that they head down to up to Sullivan and Lamb Park, up to quite a nice ground really. Friday night, what more do you want? We'll be on the telly for anyone who is unable to make that trip up, but going into it, Rovers have had a favourable record against Drogheda in recent memory. You'll have to look back quite a bit before to see when Drogheda last beat Rovers. It was actually 2018 in the FAI Cup. You'll have to look back even further to 2017 in April when Drogheda were last to beat Rovers in the league. This will be the third meeting between the sides this year, second in Sullivan and Lamb Park, after a 0-0 draw earlier in the season in Sullivan and Lamb Park, and then a 4-1 win to Rovers in Tallaght. And I think everyone, including myself, all Rovers fans, reckon this is a very winnable fixture. Drogheda are currently only sitting 4 points above the relegation playoffs and have not been having a good run of form recently. They have one win in their last 6. It's not exactly what they... It's a good time, I believe, for Rovers to be meeting them. Drogheda have been quite good going forward, but managed to get 8 goals in their last 5. But Rovers even better with 11 in their last 5. It's been third. They haven't lost to Drogheda in 13 meetings now. I think, if you're all Rovers fans, will be expecting them to get in there and get a nice result. And not necessarily saying it'll be a comfortable win or anything like that, but it's definitely one where Rovers will be expected to go on and beat Drogheda and try extend that gap at the top. As we know, Sligo are the team currently chasing Rovers, sitting just 7 points. Sligo and Bows are now sitting 7 points behind Rovers on levelled games played. So this is a must win for Rovers. The 7 points is something that can be made up pretty quickly. We've seen it before in other leagues and this league where gaps like that have been made up. Pats and Bows don't play till Sunday, so there is a nice chance that it could be extended to a 10-point lead for at least 2 days, as Pats play Derry and then Bows play Galway on Sunday. So neither of them are necessarily winnable fixtures either. Galway have also been in a bit of a bad bit of form, so of Derry, it's kind of, they're all in and around that area of only 3 points separating Drogheda, Galway, and they're in and around that same area. So it will be an interesting weekend of football. But in terms of Rovers, you're expecting them to win this. If they play like they did in the first half today, yes, they'll play Drogheda off the park. They'll absolutely just play them off the park and whip them, really, if they were to play like that. But if they play like they did in the second half tonight, I don't know. If they play like that, like they did in the second half, you could see it very easily being another 0-0 draw like it was earlier in this season in Drogheda. But Rovers need to just learn their lessons from tonight, that the first half display and that type of display of being quick and creating being quick and not giving your opponent any seconds to breathe, just not giving them a chance to breathe, and just keeping on top of them. What that can do if they take that lesson and bring that into Friday night, it's hard to not see them beating them. And as I've mentioned, about Drogheda being in a tough run of form, they obviously did beat Dundalk and they've won 4-0 in the FAI Cup against Lucan United, but they've not had a great few months recently. Looking back, they've got 3 wins since the start of May in the league. It's not ideal when Rovers have been enjoying quite a good stretch in the league, with the last loss in the league being the 12th of June. So it's quite a bit back. They obviously suffered back-to-back losses towards the end of May to Dundalk and Sligo. But at the moment, Rovers are now 4 matches unbeaten in the league, as well as picking up a win in the FAI Cup during that period as well. As we know, Rovers' home form is a lot better than that of their away form, but with their away form at the moment currently being 6 wins, 3 draws, 4 losses, I still reckon they can beat Drogheda. Drogheda's home record isn't great either. Rovers obviously have a very formidable home record, but with their away record, I just think they need to get this win and just continue the momentum. We've talked about how there's been so many games at this time, and Rovers will be playing again next Thursday night against Egnatia, who I mentioned a bit earlier, from Albania. So at least it's a little bit longer. Well, it says Thursday night at the moment, but that may change. So hopefully they can just continue to push on and try get that win and just build the momentum. They're playing a lot, and at the moment, sorry, I didn't mean Thursday, I meant Tuesday night. But as it comes to this moment in the season where there's so many matches, momentum plays such a key part. So getting that win tonight can help them carry them into Tuesday night against Egnatia, and then into Friday as well against Dundalk, and into the following Tuesday, and then into the Cup. They just need to keep on pressing. This is the hardest part of the season, and if they can just continue to build momentum and keep their lead at the top of the table and keep on pressing in the qualifiers and in the Cup, I think us Rovers fans, if they do continue to keep pressing and just keep that momentum going, us Rovers fans could be in for a very enjoyable end of season, just like we were last year. So that will be all for today's episode. Just want to thank you all for listening. And you can find the Meltdown Way anywhere you look, really. It's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us. If you could give us a follow, comment, like, whatever. We do put out polls from time to time, stuff like that. So it's nice when fans of the show can participate in the show. It helps add to it and helps it kind of feel a bit more like a community, because that's what we are hoping for. A place for Rovers fans where they can share their thoughts with us, and we can share our thoughts on the club with them. So thank you all for listening. Next episode will be out after the Drogheda match, and then soon enough we'll have Ryan Brennan back, so I won't have to do these intros and outros anymore. But thank you all for listening.